if we understand what the base of movement is, meaning the base of movement is that we have all these different joints throughout our body, and those are segments at which we can move, right? Like we can't move in the middle of a bone, we move at joints where bones connect to bones, right? So if we understand that, then we can look at the base or foundation of human movement as being able to move at those joints, at every joint that you have, being able to move through full range and be able to control full range of the movement at that joint, right? That's like the basic foundational level of human movement. But then if we stack and layer on top of that, we can look at, for each of those moves and for each of those areas, there's different ways that we can load that, right? So if we go and we think about doing a wrist move and you're going up and down, right? There's not really any loading, you're actively moving that. So that's one way that we can load that specific move. If we look at the hyperarm, this is another way that we can load that specific move, where we go here, trying to keep everything else straight, and it's pulling, like we have to, the weight is going to be swinging back. I mean, I have a ton of weight on here, so it's not really swinging back that much, but like the weight would be swinging back and we have to propulse or overcome that force going forward. So that's different than doing this, and the fact that we have to oppose weight coming forward, right? We could also do, like if you're on a bench and just had weight and you're going through, it'd be like the same movement as the first one, but now we're loading that. So with every single movement of every single joint that we have, we can load these in different ways, right? So what I want to get into with the hyperarm is it allows us to ballistically load all those other joints that are difficult to do, but it allows us to do that in every single range that we have at those joints. So for instance, if we were to take and do a deep push-up depth drop, right? Like we were to go here, land and stick it deep. We're loading the system in the sense that we're asking it to accept force quickly and to stabilize quickly. But if we think about the wrist, the only position that we're doing that in is that extension. If you were to try to land a deep push-up depth drop, like with your hands like this, or with your hands here, with your hands here, or with your hands like pronated or supinated, it's not going to go well, right? So it's a good global movement to load our whole system ballistically, but that doesn't mean that we can do that more foundational level stuff. Like I'll think about that as a little bit of a level up, because it's one specific move where there's, like if we think about what's happening at each joint during that, right? Like at our elbow joint, there's flexion. At our wrist joint, there's extension. At our shoulder joint, there's going to be some of that horizontal abduction. So, but those are the only moves that are happening at the joints when we do that move. So we're only loading them in that specific range, which is fine, right? But if that's up here and we want to go below that, and we want to be able to essentially do a depth drop, but at every single joint, we can then take the hyperarm and we can do that at every single joint. So we can go wrist, and we can go flexion, extension like I showed. Like we can go there where we're driving into extension. We can go here where we're driving into flexion. We can go here where we're driving into, what is this, ulnar or radial deviation. We can also go the opposite where we're doing that, right? We can do supination and pronation, where if you think here and we're pulling into pronation and it swings us back into supination, and we can do the opposite where it pulls us into pronation and we're trying to drive out with supination, right? So 6 different movements that we can do just at the wrist, whereas in a depth drop, like we're only getting that at extension. And now we can take and we can do that at every joint that we have. So we can do that at the wrist. We can do that at the elbow where we're going flexion, we're going extension. We can do that at the shoulder where we're going like adduction, abduction, flexion, extension. We can do rotation, right? If we were to do like a rotation move here, or we're able to ballistically load that. So with a little bit lighter weight for that one. That's a little bit too much weight for that for it to be ballistic, right? Or for it to be kind of like a faster loading speed, similar to like what a depth drop would be. But that's the point that I wanted to get across here, is the very foundation of how we move is we have joints that move. We have muscles that control the joints that we move. We also have muscles that stabilize joints. Like if we want to isometrically contract a joint for it to be able to withstand force, right? Like we have that. So we have, but at the very foundation, we have all these different joints, and we have muscles that move those joints, and we want to be able to do everything at each joint that is designed to do to give us options up above. Like if every joint that you have can do everything that it's designed to do, it's going to allow you to have those options available when you go to sprint, when you go to throw, when you go to jump, right? And what this allows us to do is actually add load that's moving at a rapid pace to each of those. So like we can take that depth drop and we can do that at each joint that we have, so that we can then train that, right? And it gives us more capacity to take into whatever specific thing that is that you're doing, whether it's just your life or whether it's some specific sport or skill that you have.